airstrikes exchange between Israel and Iran has only intensified in the past few days, with the southern suburbs of Beirut being hit by more than 30 strikes overnight. Earlier, on Saturday night, the Israeli army issued a fresh call for residents to evacuate from Beirut's southern suburbs as it continued to target Hezbollah operatives in the Lebanese capital. However, there are no signs of Iran backing down yet. And to understand what the possible response can really be from Iran's side or from Israel's side now, we are being joined by Ehud Barak, who is former Prime Minister of Israel. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us here on Times Now. You have said that Iran and Israel are in a state of war and that you expect an Israeli response after Iran's attack on 1st of October, firing more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. What kind of a response from Israel are you expecting?
I cannot tell you because I'm not part of the decision-making cycle now in Israel. But if you look at what happened to the Yemenite in the Houthis in Yemen a few weeks ago and once again a week ago, Israel attacked there. It's about the same distance. It's about 1,800 kilometers. And our Air Force attacked there. They attacked a major port of Hodeidah and oil storing installations for the first time. The second time the attack added also a power plant. So first of all, I expect it to include a massive attack on Iranian infrastructure, probably including oil exporting or oil industry. And beyond this, it probably might include some attacks on missile production lines or drones production line, from which came the weapons which attacked Israel. And Israel has a very good capabilities in kind of in cyber and other modes of operation. And even people suggest that we had certain capabilities in Tehran itself. Israel never took responsibility for this. So I cannot tell you what will be the nature of the attack, but it should be a massive one. Israel has a compelling imperative to do it. No sovereign on earth would have accepted two such attacks, one in April, one just recently, with ballistic missiles and many other weapons on its territory without responding it.
Okay, but Mr. Barak, you have also said that the Iran missile attack ended in failure, much like the attack in April by Iran on Israel. Now, given this failure, because it did not manage to inflict severe damage, what kind of wherewithal does Iran have to retaliate if and when Israel does respond?
I said earlier that I am not within the inner circle of decision-making in Israel. For sure, I cannot predict exactly what Iran will do. But they cannot act effectively with their Air Force. They have a very weak Air Force against Israel. They cannot deploy ground forces against Israel. They cannot deploy very effectively even their missiles, as we've seen in these two attacks. We were not alone. We were supported by the Americans, by the British, by some neighboring countries who helped us to block the attack. But basically, we succeeded. And in the last attack with 180 ballistic missiles, we have 2 people wounded in Israel, and one was killed in the Palestinian area in the West Bank. That's not impressive result. So probably they will try the same. Probably they try to do other things. They have proxy on our border, which is the Hezbollah, that suffered major blows in the recent 2 weeks, but still has tens of thousands of missiles and heavy rockets that cover all Israel practically. So they probably will choose to activate them more forcefully, and they probably will try to send them more munitions, more weapons, more missiles over the ground through Iraq and Syria or by the air. They probably will try even to call upon mercenaries, Shiite fighters or mercenaries from all around the Middle East to come and join Hezbollah to help them. So they have many ways to do, but we did not invite this war, we didn't want this war, but if it is imposed upon Israel, we'll have to fight back and do our best to exact a high price from Iran for getting it.
Now, we also know that the Iranian president has been in Qatar for the last couple of days, presumably trying to shore up support for his country against Israel. How do you see the other regional players getting involved in it? Can we talk about Qatar and also Saudi Arabia, the latter with whom Israel has been developing ties in the recent times?
Look, the original Iranian proxies in what they call the Ring of Fire, that under the vision of the late terrorist Qasem Soleimani was supposed to deploy around this. That include the guys that I described, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Iraq, some dormant cells in the West Bank and so on. But they are trying to influence the other neighbors who are much more moderate about Israel. So I think that the new president probably as a part of his fight to convince the Iranian supreme leader to be more flexible, more kind of open to the West. Probably he tries to convince the Qataris or the Saudis to join them. As of now, I'm not sure that the Saudis or Qataris are happy for everything that Israel is doing, but Israel is doing it out of its own security needs. But I don't believe that Qatar or Saudi Arabia will now be ready to be explicitly standing by Iran rather than by the United States and the other moderate Sunnite autocracies in the region, namely Egypt, Jordan, the Emiratis, and so on.
Okay, interesting point of view there. But Mr. Barak, now you were the prime minister when Israeli soldiers pulled out of Lebanon following an invasion that lasted 18 years. Starting in 1982, Israel is carrying out ground operations in Lebanon now. Do you see them there for a long haul? Is there a possibility of them being sucked in for a long time?
Look, I'm proud of my decision to pull out of Lebanon. It cut a tragedy, as you mentioned, that already was 18 years old and cost us a lot of human life without ever being really effective in protecting Israel against even short-range rockets. So it was a good decision then. And as a result of it, we had the best probably 6 years in the north of Israel. But having said that, as of now, we are operating on the ground in Lebanon in a very limited area just behind the border in order to make sure that the infrastructure that Hezbollah probably prepared for a similar attack to the one that was launched by the Hamas in October 7 last year, it's just to make sure that such a infrastructure cannot be operated against Israel from the border. I don't think that we will stay there for 18 years or even for 2 years, but probably we'll stay there for whatever it takes to convince the world to take some steps to resume UN Security Council Resolution 1701 and earlier for the Resolution 425, namely to make sure that Hezbollah is not deployed along the border. That's responsibility of state of Lebanon, who were in a way hijacked by the Hezbollah in regard to the activities along the Israeli border. I see an opportunity now for the Americans, for the French, for the rest of the Arab world to push toward a reorganization in Lebanon that will bring back sovereignty to the Lebanon armed forces rather than to Hezbollah over the border. And it will help to make the border quiet. I hope that will be the case. Hezbollah now suffered major blows in the last several weeks, but it's still a very big terror organization, and tens of thousands of fighters, tens of thousands of missiles can be launched into Israel, and a lot of battlefield experience gathered along the many years of fighting in Syria, side by side with President Assad Jr.
What about Gaza then? Since the ground operations there have lasted more than a year, do you expect fatigue to set in?
Look, I'm a harsh critique of our own government in regard to Gaza. I think that we should complete the destruction of reigning capabilities and of Hamas and causing them major damage within 2 months or 3 months. And we had to be for many, many months leaving Gaza behind us, passing it to an inter-Arab force that will made of Egyptian and Emiratis and Jordanian soldiers, something that the Hamas cannot attack. They cannot afford shooting at Egyptians who hold their oxygen pipe, and they cannot afford shooting at Emiratis who hold their wallet for the reconstruction in Gaza. Israel should bring back the hostages. Israel should have a long ceasefire in the south, which will enable this inter-Arab force to bring back gradually what Biden called revived Palestinian Authority, namely the only legitimate body that can brought in and recognized by the world community, by the neighboring Arab countries, and by the Palestinians themselves. And I think that, unlike our government, that would be a good idea because it will enable Israel to join a wider alliance. Netanyahu described this as the alliance of blessing, which include Israel, the earlier mentioned Sunnite autocracies, together with the United States, backed by the EU as well, and deploying against the axis of chaos or rogue entities led by Tehran, including all these proxies, and backed by Russia and indirectly by China. That's the right geopolitical deployment, especially if the whole thing deteriorates into a regional war. Israel is the strongest player probably in the region, but it's not omnipotent. If we are dealing with a real regional war with all the Iranian proxies and Iran itself, we better have, besides us, such a alignment led by the United States. And I think that it should be accepted by this proposal of Biden, which included even normalization with Saudi Arabia and future opening for negotiations about a two-state solution. All this should have been accepted by Israel as a very good blessing and followed. Unfortunately, our government stick to the fixation of controlling Gaza, which I believe is wrong. Hamas already destroyed militarily. It cannot initiate a new 7th of October attack. And we, the Israelis, should understand that the only way to defeat Hamas is not by killing more innocent Gazans or killing more Hamas terrorists. It's only by replacing Sinwar and Hamas by another body which is legitimate in the eyes of international law and in the eyes of neighboring Arabs and in the eyes of the Palestinians themselves.
Okay, Mr. Barak, now the last couple of weeks have yielded results. Nasrallah has been killed, the Hezbollah leadership and cadre has also been targeted using the pager detonations, and you have said that there is a certain self-confidence within Israel and its political leadership about the results achieved. Does this strengthen the public opinion in favor of Netanyahu, someone you have criticized?
I'm not happy about any civilian being killed, and I don't think that most Israelis are happy about any civilian killed. But you have to put it all in proportion. And you have to understand that following the events of 7th of October, the barbarian attack on our citizens, it's not even soldiers, the abduction of people, the mutilation, the raping, the burning of alive human beings, killing children in front of their parents and the other way around. Israel had a compelling imperative to respond very forcefully in order to minimize damage to or loss of life to civilian. We warned for almost 7 days, day after day, we warned the population, leave your houses, move to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. We will not hurt you, and you will not be part of the clash. And about 800,000 citizens of Gaza area, out of 1.1 in the northern part of Gaza, 800,000 really lived and moved to the southern part of the area of Ehud Barak and Rafah.
Mr. Barak, how will you like to respond to the criticism about a disproportionate Israeli response? The numbers of Palestinians killed in Gaza are in tens of thousands. In Lebanon, it's almost 2,000, with more than 500 being killed in one single day. Israel may say it's justified in its right to retaliate, but what about the extensive civilian casualties in both Gaza as well as Lebanon?
I didn't complete my answer for the previous. So we did a major effort to avoid killing innocent people in Gaza. Those who stayed there stayed because of the handgun aimed at their heads by the Hamas, who used them basically as human shields. And you cannot expect Israel not to operate in Gaza after such a barbarian attack just because the Hamas coerced some of their people to stay there. So that's about this question.
But Mr. Barak, we've also seen the Americans standing solidly behind Israel. But what's your assessment of Russian and Chinese behavior so far? Russia was extremely critical of Nasrallah's killing. What kind of involvement do you expect from these powers?
China and Russia are part of a newly emerging axis made of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, and they are backing Iran. Iran is a major supplier of oil to China. Iran is a major supplier of missiles and drones to Russia for its war in Ukraine. So they will back it. They will try to act diplomatically vis-a-vis the Americans, probably Russia, and vis-a-vis the neighboring countries, probably even China, to convince them not to back Israel in its position vis-a-vis Iran. I hope that both the neighbors here and the Americans will not yield to this pressure from Russia and China. But it's up to us to be seen. And on the other hand, I still expect that Israel will be capable of mobilizing the United States to stand fully behind it in the compelling imperative to punish Iran for this unprecedented missile attack on a neighbor. Iran worked for years to do everything through proxies without ever putting their hands into the war. Now they find themselves deep into it, and they will have to pay the price.
Okay. Now, India and Israel have shared close ties, but India also has ties with Iran. Do you see there being any possibility of that influence being leveraged to broker some kind of an understanding?
I don't know. It's up to the Indian government. I think that the two axes that I've described, the one led by the Americans and the European and like-minded countries in the East, and other led by China and Russia and Iran, there is a heavy competition for the support of India. And I hope and wish and think that India will be better join the American alliance, American-European alliance, Indo-Pacific alliance, which should not be militarily deployed against China, but India is a strategic major power, especially in regard to the global south, which India led for decades, starting in the previous century. And I think that India becomes extremely important power on the world arena because of the need of either main axis to have its support, and it gives India a lot of weight, a lot of power to influence, and I wish that it will be used in the right manner, not just for India, but for the rest of the world.
But finally, sir, how do you really see this ending, this conflict that has now started?
I think that such a kind of clash cannot easily be ended with a total victory of either side. We are for sure, when we are backed by the Americans, so as long as we are backed by them, we are stronger than any neighbor, any of the proxies around us, and even vis-a-vis Iran. Iran cannot defeat Israel. And but on the other hand, Israel itself cannot defeat Iran, cannot even topple down the Ayatollahs. We don't have any problem with the Iranian people. It's a great people, a great civilization all along history, but they are now under extremely fanatic, dark kind of religious leadership, made of clever people, smart people, very well kind of very highly experienced, but bad for the region, and I believe bad for the Iranians themselves. So I think that it will end up with certain kind of level of attrition, exchange of blows, and at certain point after American election, probably within the coming year, it will settle down and it will set down. Even the new axis of Russia and China and Iran, they have much more urgent problems. The Russians are deep into a war in Ukraine, and the Chinese are deep into a kind of emerging conflict in regard to Taiwan diplomatically at this stage, but might become more sensitive. So I don't think that they have an interest of showdown of force of Israel and America vis-a-vis Iran.
All right, Mr. Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective on the evolving situation as far as Israel and Iran is concerned. We'll, of course, be tracking this closely ahead as well. For now, we'll slip into a short